Claude just made the same mistake for the third time, not because the model is dumb, because it has no memory of your project. It doesn't remember the decision from last week, it doesn't remember why you moved to GraphQL, and it doesn't remember your weird conversations. This is MemPalace, and it's blown up with over 52,000 stars on GitHub. It's said to give us local, lossless, long-term memory for our AI tools. I'll show you what MemPalace is, how it works, and the key differences to other tools we already have. Now, the short version of all this is MemPalace stores our conversations word for word, runs locally, and has Claude Code hooks and supports MCP tools, and it doesn't need API keys for the core memory flow. Now, the main point I should touch on here is someone's bound to say, we already have context mode. Yes, true, we do. Context mode is good for keeping one long coding session from blowing up your context window. MemPalace is different. It gives your AI permanent memory access completely across separate chats and even days. They actually work great together, so you can actually run both of them side by side. MemPalace is super straightforward, so let me show you how to set this up and how this would work in the real world. If you enjoy coding tools that speed up your workflow, be sure to subscribe. We have videos coming out all the time. Let's just start with the demo because this is where a lot of memory tools just fall apart. I'm going to run UV tool install MemPalace. The repo currently recommends installing it with UV to avoid dependency conflicts, though pip still works if that's your setup. Then I'm going to initialize a palace for my project just by running MemPalace init within a project. You're creating a local memory database for the things your AI shouldn't forget. Now you mine the project files, notes, and old Claude Code sessions. I can do this by saying MemPalace mine. Then I'm going to MemPalace mine the Claude conversations from the past. And this is key here because real project context is never in one clean place. It's in commits, docs, chats, notes, random markdown files, and you barely remember making half of these. Now I can ask MemPalace search in a question, like why did we switch to GraphQL? And instead of guessing from today's prompt, it pulls the old discussions where that decision happened. That's the first really big contrast here. Your AI doesn't need a bigger prompt, it just needs better memory. When we run MemPalace mine, this is the step that teaches it everything. It goes into the folder we tell it, it reads every file it finds, and it breaks it into smaller pieces. It then offloads that and saves everything verbatim into your memory palace, so then we can search for it. Now, what is MemPalace actually doing, right? The demo worked, we saw how it works. It uses a memory palace metaphor, projects or people becoming the actual infrastructure, related to facts and events live in different rooms. The original source text lives in these drawers, but don't get distracted by that metaphor. The important part is the original content stays intact. Most memory systems do the obvious thing first. They take the messy conversation and ask an LLM to turn it into clean facts. That sounds smart, but it has a big problem. If the summary drops a weird constraint, an edge case, or a reason behind a decision, that detail is gone from memory. MemPalace takes the opposite bet. It keeps the original text word for word and then builds a compact index above it, so the AI can find the right area without throwing away what's inside. Under it all, it is pretty dev-friendly. ChromaDB on disk for retrieval, SQLite for the knowledge graph. MCP integration so agents can actually use the memory, and Claude Code hooks so this can fit into a real coding workflow instead of sitting off to the side. Mem0 and Zep are often more productized, more SDK focused, and better if you're building memory into an app or product. MemPalace feels more like a tool for devs who want their coding agents to remember the actual work history locally. The trade-off here is clear. If you want a hosted product, other tools are going to be better. If you want a local memory system that keeps your original source, MemPalace has the edge here. Now, the Code Claude integration is where it starts to feel more practical. The plugin can start the MCP server, expose the tools, teach Claude the memory protocol, and search the palace before answering questions about past work. The detail sounds small, but it's not. There's a huge difference between I have a database somewhere and my coding agent knows when to look in memory before it answers. Here's what devs seem to like. First, exact recall. If you said something weird but important 3 weeks ago, it can retrieve the original wording instead of a cleaned up summary. Then there's cost and privacy. The official docs say the content stays local using ChromaDB and SQLite on disk with no API key required for core flow. Then is the low startup context. You don't need to paste 40,000 tokens of a project lore every time. It's going to run this. You load enough pointers for the agent to know where to look. The temporal knowledge graph is also a big deal here because software decisions, they do expire. We use a REST API. That might have been true a couple months ago, and then it might be wrong last month. The normal fact, databases can actually miss that. A timeline-aware memory system has a better shot at understanding what changed and when. That is the second big contrast. Memory is not just about facts, it's about time. The Palace hierarchy is clever, but it's not perfect by any means. For some projects, plain ChromaDB semantic search over your transcripts might give you most of your value with fewer concepts. There is also setup in the maintenance, so local databases are great until you need backups, cleanup migration, or a sync. And this is not a full manager to manage your memory platform. If you want admin controls, dashboards, permissioning, this tool is not there yet. One practical warning here, because this project went viral, there are lookalike domains. The README says the official sources are the GitHub repo and the Python packaging and the doc site. So do not install from random MemPalace websites you find in search. That is not a small warning. This is a tool that touches your project history, so treat it like part of your dev environment. If you are using Claude Code, Cursor, or local agents, this makes sense. Or if you care about local first tooling and you just hate paying for subscriptions, just so your AI remembers what you already told it. I would just steer clear of this if you want a zero config hosted service, or if your projects are short enough that a README and a good prompt already solve the problem. If you enjoy coding tools like this, be sure to subscribe to the Better Stack channel. We'll see you in another video.